How old was this young man when you first had any kind of sexual contact with him?
20.
Welcome to Watch Mojo UK, and today we're looking at things TV presenters never wanted us to know.
I can pretend to be nice for a little bit of time, you know, at the beginning of a relationship, pretending to be nice. I'm quite nice, I nod a lot.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Jermaine Jenas. In 2024, footballer turned pundit and presenter Jermaine Jenas was brutally sacked by the BBC.
In a short statement, all a spokesperson said was, "We can confirm that he is no longer part of our presenting lineup."
After 4 years co-hosting The One Show, he was ousted, discovering the news while live presenting the radio.
I can't really talk about it.
It turned out that Jenas had allegedly been sending racy, inappropriate texts to 2 women working on the program, being unfaithful to his wife, Ellie Penfold. In the aftermath of the scandal, Jenas stepped down from broadcasting to do some work on himself, publicly apologizing to the women and to his wife. In early 2025, he returned to presenting on Talk Sports and seems to have done a lot of soul-searching and managed to keep his marriage intact.
But currently, as it stands, I'm going to have to let the lawyers deal with it. You know, there's 2 sides to every story.
Gregg Wallace.
At the time, I just thought he's just desperate for attention.
Most of the public had no idea of the extent of Gregg Wallace's alleged weird behavior until it all came spilling out in 2024. This was after a handful of more private scandals about his actions, but eventually dozens of allegations made against Wallace, the product of an extensive internal investigation after the BBC sacked him, were upheld.
So this is what Gregg Wallace said to me in a restaurant. "If you won't let me sleep with you, would you lick my arse?"
He then said that actually he was being discriminated against for being autistic and that he was in a vulnerable position because, during his time on MasterChef, nobody realized this and sent him to get diagnosed. He's now suing the BBC over what he calls a terrible injustice because he wasn't protected enough from his own propensity to take off his trousers.
Would you like to know the truth about the stories regarding me taking my trousers down?
Paul Hollywood.
Why is it so hard at the bottom, Paul? What's that?
I don't know what I'm hitting down the bottom.
I put some books in the bottom of it.
Don't let those blue eyes fool you. Paul Hollywood has had his share of scandals. Yes, the baking legend is a dirty dog, splitting up with his first wife Alexandra twice, once after an affair he had with the co-host of the short-lived American baking competition, Marcella Valladolid.
Have you actually tried this?
No.
It's absolutely... it's not edible.
It's nice!
After that was finally over in 2019, Hollywood, then in his early 50s, got a girlfriend 30 years younger than him. He's now remarried to his second wife, but went on the record in 2022 saying that cheating on Alexandra was, quote, the biggest mistake of his life. He's one of the few presenters with a salacious personal life who's weathered the storm.
That has got to be the worst cake that's ever been baked in the tent. Ever.
I know.
That's impressive.
Ed Mitchell.
You'd been a newsreader, a journalist for 35 years, but there was a point, wasn't there, Ed, where you were drinking even before leaving the house in the morning?
That's true, yes.
During his time working for various news outlets as a business correspondent, including the BBC and Channel 4, Ed Mitchell was grappling with something harrowing behind the scenes: alcohol dependency. He eventually lost his job over his drinking and 7 years later was discovered sleeping rough in Hove, having filed for bankruptcy and lost his home.
There are certain points where you think, hang on, this isn't going very well. The blackouts, the winding up in strange places.
He wrote a book and was the subject of a documentary where he raised awareness for these issues and eventually began presenting again in 2014. It just goes to show that you just never know what people are dealing with behind the scenes and how easy it is to lose everything.
The first stage is really wanting to get out of it, is the realization that there is a problem.
Tim Westwood.
When I took Armic's car to the garage, it was straight embarrassing.
Britain's strangest radio DJ started facing scrutiny for some alleged actions back in 2020, though this was after he'd already tried to keep his age a secret, once lying to the newspapers and saying he was 27 when he was really 43. He also keeps generally quiet on his background since he spent his childhood being raised by a vicar vicar in Norfolk rather than being a roadman in South London.
This afternoon stepped down from his weekly Saturday night radio slot on Capital Extra after allegations he abused his position in the music industry to exploit women who accuse him of predatory sexual behaviour.
But in the 2020s, the police started investigating him following numerous allegations of sexual offences. In October 2025, 5 years after investigations began, he was formally charged with multiple offences relating to 7 different women. He ultimately pleaded not guilty, with a trial set for January 2027.
Now, if I try to get out of it, who's to say how he's going to react?
Russell Brand.
Yeah, I take an awful lot of precautions. What I do is I make absolutely sure that it is a woman, then go for it.
There's always been a lot of darkness around Russell Brand, going back to the beginning of his fame when he spoke candidly about poverty and substance misuse. But like Tim Westwood, the 2020s haven't been kind to him. After moving to Florida and rebranding himself as a guru of mindfulness and alternative medicine, he became the subject of a documentary and newspaper investigation in 2023, accused of serious sexual offences.
Looking back on the relationship, which started consensually, Alice now feels she was controlled by Brand.
Police investigated and unearthed a bevy of new claimants. He's pleaded not guilty and is now waiting until mid-2026 for his case to be heard by the courts.
He was allowed to say the unsayable, he was allowed to do the unthinkable, and consistently got away with it.
Martin Bashir.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
He was keeping one enormous secret for 20 years, the fact that he defrauded the late Diana, Princess of Wales, to attain that Panorama interview. We all know the story now, that Bashir tricked Diana and her brother, Earl Spencer, with doctored bank statements suggesting that her friends were selling stories about her to the papers.
But there are mounting questions for the BBC and the journalist Martin Bashir tonight over what he did to secure his Panorama interview with Princess Diana.
He got a BAFTA for it, but eventually the truth came out and an inquiry was launched, ultimately finding him guilty of deceit. He had his BAFTA taken off him and was lucky that the Met didn't pursue criminal charges over what happened.
25 years on, Diana's brother Earl Spencer wants an apology. He introduced Martin Bashir to his sister in 1995, but says Bashir showed him faked evidence.
Ant McPartlin.
Facing the cameras in unfamiliar and uncomfortable surroundings, Ant McPartlin headed into court, saying he's ashamed and mortified of events last month.
In 2015, the first half of Ant and Dec was set on a dark path after some routine surgery went wrong. He developed a dependence on prescription painkillers and alcohol, a problem that rapidly spiraled out of control. He was keeping it so well hidden that he was taking illicit substances even before presenting his program.
The court heard how in his first police interview, the entertainer repeatedly answered no comment, but days later admitted his culpability and began to seek treatment.
Just when it looked like everything was behind him and he'd completed rehab, he was arrested for drink driving, pleading guilty and paying an enormous fine, leading to a second stint in rehab. By all accounts though, he's been doing alright since then. It's lucky that nobody was seriously harmed in that car crash.
I just want to say I'm truly sorry for what happened. Higher standards are expected of me. I expect them of myself. I let myself down. I let a lot of people down.
Phillip Schofield.
When did you first meet this young man in question? What were the circumstances?
I was invited by a friend of mine to go to a school.
There were murmurs of Phillip Schofield's same-sex affair for years, with the tabloids sniffing around him long before this scandal was dragged into the light. In 2023, headline news was made when he finally admitted to the affair, promptly resigning from all his television jobs, or being let go, according to his own version of events.
In my statement, it says, consensual relationship, fully legal. I mean, that was approved by both sides.
A media circus ensued, with the story getting so sensational that Holly Willoughby was forced to make a public address on This Morning, denouncing her former co-host as a liar. In hindsight, it all got extremely out of hand, with various pundits saying that the gutter press's feeding frenzy was an overreaction.
You've had a workplace fling, and you lie about it.
Huw Edwards.
This was Edwards after he'd been caught for receiving more than 40 photos and videos.
Once the BBC's safest pair of hands, everything came crashing down for Huw Edwards in 2023 when The Sun published a story about a 17-year-old Edwards had allegedly been in contact with. It turned out that everything The Sun was saying was apparently true and worse.
Edwards claims a neurological disorder means he has no memory of viewing the images.
Edwards immediately vanished from screens and was eventually hit with a criminal conviction for making indecent images, pleading guilty to the offences and getting a suspended sentence and going on the register. His wife has also left him, and the BBC re-edited an episode of Doctor Who to expunge him. We'd be surprised to ever see him on TV again.
The BBC knew Huw Edwards had been arrested long before the public did, but kept paying him until he resigned.
Let us know in the comments what list you want to see us make next.